when you say history establishment, there is a fundamental, you know, definitive or rather definitional aspect to it. When something becomes an establishment, it automatically has a connotation of a ruling class. All right. Now, as it evolved in India after independence, and since these Marxists, these fellows began to slowly infiltrate the institutions, history also became a ruling class. Rather, history establishment was part of the ruling class. In the last episode, I mentioned how, in the pre-independence period, although history writing was in a sense directly controlled by the colonial British, there was enough freedom, enough academic freedom to conduct objective research. Now, what the findings, interpretations of those research, how they were interpreted, say, by British and colonial scholars, chiefly German colonial scholars, that is a different subject. And how Indian scholars who worked on the same findings would, at many times, in a majority of cases, would come to the exact opposite conclusion. So this was a state of what is known as history establishment in the colonial era. Now, after independence, the government ideally should have had no business to be in the writing of history or history textbooks. So it should have at best created an autonomous body which would meet from time to time, discuss within the scholarly community and come to a consensus as to what the truths of history, how it should be interpreted, what should be the acceptable conclusions, and so on. Because history is like I said, it's a quest of truth. So, and with the emergence of new evidence, with the emergence of, say, new findings, the consensus which had been accepted so far might have to be discarded completely, or it might have to be modified. So it is a continuous process. But the kind of hold that the government itself, by directly getting into the business of history writing, it became completely politicized almost from day one. That is almost from the time that Nawab Nehru, became the Lord and the Supreme Master of everything in India, including history. So that man had an opinion on everything, as we have seen. History is no different. Now, when we come, say, to the mid-60s or the late 60s, that is when the rot really began to seep in. 1969, like I said, was a pivotal point in the history of post-independent India. That was when Indira Gandhi split the Congress party and packed, formed her government, packing them with communist support. And then the JNU was formed, ICHR was formed. At that time, Nurul Hasan, her education minister, he hunted, collected all the hardcore Marxist alleged academics and put them into JNU and ICHR. ICHR was formed in 1972, and that soon became the hub of Marxist intrigue. It is not Marxist history writing, it is a hub of Marxist intrigue. Okay. Intrigue, cabal, plot, clique, group,
all of them apply.
All of them apply. And now, with the formation of ICHR, with the establishment of JNU, and then you already, by that time, you already had these powerful alleged schools of history called Aligarh University and Allahabad University. So you see how systematically these fellows have penetrated the whole field of history writing. Now, with the formation of the Indian Council for Historical Research, along with the founding of Jawaharlal Nehru University, was a watershed event. Now, there was history writing before that, and there was history writing that began after these two institutions were formed. Now, to cut a long story short, in 1965 or 67, Romila Thapar wrote a pamphlet for a history journal or something, in which she for the first time, she used the term communalizing history writing.
She used it.
She used for the first time. It was an open call. It was basically, it was a pamphlet, yes, but it was also an ideological statement. It was a call for action, call to action. That whatever went by in the name of history before we came in should all be discarded. Or she didn't, in so many words, she pretty much hinted at discarding all the history writing that had, come until then.
By the likes of Jadunath Sarkar.
That whole stalwarts of Indian Renaissance. And then she said we have to have a relook at Indian history, all aspects of Indian history. So that, according to her, and of course she was aided by her Marxist gang members, and a new formula was hatched, which reinterpreted Indian, not reinterpreted, which viewed Indian history using Marxist theory of, haves versus have-nots, oppressor versus oppressed, capitalist versus communists, communalists versus progressives. So these new terms began to be, they were introduced after she wrote that pamphlet. I'm simplifying a lot of details here, but pretty much this is the essence.
So this was the beginning of a reset 000
yes,
to painting their own version.
Yes. Okay. So that was also declaration of war.
Okay.
You see how systematically they work. 1930s mein Muhammad Habib came in. Then that other fellows, Satish Chandra came in, one of those fellows. Satish Chandra or Bipan Chandra, the older of the two. So he sat and began to do this Marxist tampering in Allahabad University. And in Aligarh, Muhammad Habib was ruling the roost. So you see how they had set the pitch, how they had queered the pitch.
So like a multi-pronged
attack. So when the institutional capture was complete, by the time Indira Gandhi became the Prime Minister and Nurul Hassan became the Education Minister, the occupation was near total.
Occupation, interesting word.
Occupation. Usurpation, that is it was nearly complete. And one of the techniques that they adopted was, I'll list out 3 or 4 techniques. One is to pack all the levers of power in all these institutions with fellow travelers, comrades. These fellows are very good at giving self-certifications.
They
call themselves as, in those days, they used to call themselves as progressives. They used to call themselves as, comrades and future-looking heralds and things like that. It's funny, even they use these technical terms even in a casual conversation.
You mentioned.
Yeah.
This is how they talk.
This is how they talk. Even you can't have a regular conversation with these fellows.
There's nothing regular about it.
So how was the weather? How are your kids? No, nothing. It's only about revolution and comradeship and, how Comrade Mao has established paradise in China.
Imaginary battle they're fighting every day.
It's like that, yeah. So this is how it went. And packing these fellows, their ideological friends at the highest levers of power, and then forming a mutual admiration society. That was step number 1. Step number 2, and here is where you have to give it to these leftist fellows. The kind of understanding of the bureaucracy that the leftists have is unparalleled anywhere. They know exactly which switch to, turn on and which room will be illuminated as a result of that. Or which switch to turn off so that a bomb is detonated in the 4th floor.
So this is innate within...
Yes. Because see, when you look at how communist parties were organized and still are organized, they think themselves as governments.
Okay.
So there is a
Politburo and all of that.
Politburo, then there is secretariat.
The construct itself is that of the government.
The construct itself is that. So they are mimicking a government.
Got it.
In countries which are not yet fully communist. So this was how they operated. So
interesting, very interesting. Okay, I get the insight. Yeah.
Their understanding of the workings of bureaucracy is extraordinary. So That is technique number 2. And technique number 3 is the destruction or the marginalization of their ideological enemies. There is no thing that you can disagree with a Marxist. You're either their comrades or you're their enemy.
Enemy. You're with us or
There is
against
no
us?
golden mean. There is no, middle path at all. So, all the honest scholars, non-ideological scholars, they don't have to be, Hindu scholars of history and things like that. No, objective, honest scholars who, for the love of knowledge and for the sake of scholarship, disinterested scholarship, they were viewed as enemies. And so, as long as they had a tenure, they ensured that, either they were co-opted or their work was marginalized. And once this capture was accomplished, these fellows began to write new textbooks based on this Marxist framework, which I'll come to, what their Marxist alleged framework of history is. I'll come to that later. But now for the technique. They began to produce new history textbooks at all levels, from the primary level till postdoctoral level. And a new breed, a new crop of new harvest of this kind of Marxist history, rather Marxist ideology packaged as history, as Indian history, that began to flood our universities, that began to flood into our popular narratives of history and so on. And then they also took over all the university journals.
So they took over
Yes,
that too?
yes, completely. And disagreement, dissent was not tolerated. And if it went on beyond a certain threshold, it was ruthlessly crushed. Careers were destroyed. And just to give you, a random fact, this man, Irfan Habib, he has written a wonderful book on Mughal revenue administration. It's a good book.
Okay.
Good book in the sense it is data rich.
Okay.
You can't. Some of the things that he writes in the Mughal revenue system is unacceptable. But you have to give it to him for his research and the data.
Data. Okay.
Primary sources, the bibliography, and all these things are